Hey everyone, Steven here, and today I'm reviewing a 16-inch 120Hz 2K portable monitor from Uperfect. Now I've had this for some time now and it's been on the back burner as I've had to review other products for companies, including another Uperfect monitor, but I personally bought this one because the specs along with the great price just made this an overall deal I just couldn't resist. With that being said though, let's get into the specs first before I talk about my experience with this monitor. So this model is the M160C01, and this is a 16-inch 120Hz monitor with a 2560 by 1600 resolution, which makes this a 16 by 10 aspect ratio like you find on some handhelds right now like the One X Player 2. This is an IPS matte panel that covers 100% of the sRGB color space. This has a contrast ratio of 1200:1, which most regular IPS monitors for PCs that I've actually reviewed in the past, they've just had a 1000:1 contrast ratio, so this is actually better than those in that regard. This has a peak brightness of 500 nits and is HDR capable. For response time, it isn't listed on the manual, and the closest monitor on Uperfect's site that has all the same specs is the C2, which should be the slightly newer version of this monitor, but again it has all the exact same specs here, and that one has a response time of 3 to 5 milliseconds. Now it isn't specified whether or not it's motion picture response time or gray to gray, unfortunately, but I'm gonna assume that this monitor is basically the same with the 3 to 5 milliseconds on the response time. For ports, on the left hand side you have two USB Type-C ports and a mini HDMI port, which is pretty standard for portable monitors that I've used. One of the USB Type-C ports is for power, and this doesn't have a built-in battery, so this has to be plugged in when you use it. On the right hand side of the monitor you have the power button, single menu button, and headphone jack. On either side of the monitor you have a speaker, which I'm going to do a sound test for those in a little bit, but these are 1 watt each at 8 ohms. On the back of the monitor you'll find that this is VESA compatible, so you can mount this on a monitor arm, and this has a 75 by 75 millimeter pattern. And Uperfect does make various stands and mounts for these as well, so they do have those that will fit this pattern. This weighs 1.7 pounds and is 0.4 inches thick. You'll get the cover that doubles as a stand with this, which seems pretty standard among these portable monitors right now. And then inside of the box, you will find the monitor, the cover, two USB Type-C cables, a mini HDMI to regular HDMI cable, and the user manual. The price here is normally $239.99, but this is currently on sale for $168.99 as of the recording of this video, but this does seem to be on sale quite often. I actually got mine on sale for $189.99, so the current sale is actually cheaper than what I got mine for. Next, let's look at the in-panel settings here. The first tab is the brightness tab, where you can adjust just the different settings as well as the presets, but you have brightness, black level, contrast. We're gonna look at the presets here in a second, and then you have the dynamic contrast ratio. Starting with the presets though, the first one here is standard. After that you have RTS, FPS, text, movie, and game. After that is the image tab, and the only thing here is the aspect ratio, and you can change this between 16 by 10 and 4 by 3. That's the only two options that you actually get with this. You can't force this to do 16 by 9. It'll just automatically do that with whatever source that you have. After that you have the color temperature. We're going to look at the different profiles that you have with this here in a second, but underneath color temp is red, green, and blue. This lends itself a little bit red, so I've actually bumped up the blue just to help out with that. For the color temperature though, you have user, warm, and cool. That's it, just those three settings. After that you have the on-screen display settings. Here you can change the language, the position, the timer, and the transparency. And so I have this actually set to 60 seconds, so it'll stay up a little bit longer. By default I think it's 10 seconds. After that you have the reset tab. Here you can reset the whole monitor in terms of the settings, and then you have the HDR mode and the adjustments with that, which let's go ahead and actually look at what we have in terms of options for HDR mode. So you really just have two options here. You have auto, which I personally think looks the best, and then you have 2084. And it's just an adjustment in contrast is kind of what it seems like it's doing. It seems like there's an increase in contrast when you're doing the 2084 over the auto. If you turn this off and you're running HDR content, everything's going to look washed out, so do keep that in mind. And then the last tab here is going to be the miscellaneous tab. You can choose the signal source, adjust low blue light, adjust the volume, turn FreeSync on or off, and then turn the overdrive on or off. So now that I've covered everything in the panel settings, let's go ahead and do that volume test for the speakers really quick. So now that I've covered the specs in the panel settings, let's talk about what I like here, starting with the performance and versatility, which has been top notch. So the size here is slightly smaller than the 17.3 inch portable monitors I've recently reviewed, and I do personally prefer this smaller size. I would say a 14 inch monitor would be something I would want to try next, just as the portability factor increases as we start to make these just a little bit smaller, and so it seems more practical than these super large ones. They're just bigger to carry around. Now these are mountable, so on the flip side, I could see these being an option for people who want an overall slimmer setup that still performs great while also being portable when needed. Now I'm not saying these necessarily compete with top-notch PC monitors, but I would argue they do get quite close to some budget monitors I've reviewed in the past, with some even outperforming those monitors when it comes to the response time. I could do a whole video on the pros and cons when comparing the two, but in general I would say this could definitely be an option for anyone that needs something that has the option to be easily portable without the need for the latest and greatest in terms of the specs. And that's kind of a blanket like general statement. I mean, it depends. Are you needing like many LEDs? I haven't seen any portable monitors that have that feature, but I have seen OLED portable monitors, so that could be an option for you if you're needing more of like a top tier HDR experience with just like the infinite amount of local dimming zones and all the just upside that OLEDs have compared to different IPS or VA panel monitors. Depends on how much you want to spend, of course, but there are some out there that could compete a little bit more. But for the price tag, you could get like a massive OLED compared to just a smaller one. So there's just these trade-offs you end up dealing with that. Now breaking down the performance into specifics with this portable monitor, I think the response time here is really good. I mentioned the 3 to 5 milliseconds. Again, we don't know if that's motion picture response time or gray to gray, but it does look good. So if I'm running the UFO test, I'm not seeing a lot of ghosting or inverse ghosting or black trailing. I'm not seeing much in regards to that, which is a good thing. The colors here look really good and vibrant with plenty of adjustments in the panel settings, and the resolution here makes everything look crisp and detailed. In fact, the pixel density with this smaller size actually makes this seem more like a 4K monitor, while the 1080p portable monitors I've recently reviewed at the larger 17.3 inches, they're more like 2K. So it's this interesting trade-off because you're taking just the amount of pixels that you have for that resolution and then you're just cramming them down into a smaller size. So again, that's something that I've mentioned with those monitors is really in person, they look like they're 1440p monitors. And so you take this resolution here, 2560 by 1600, and then you make it even smaller than those other monitors. And again, it just has this level of detail and crispness to the image quality where it looks to me like 4K, but you're basing that off of the pixel density. How many pixels are you going to have crammed in an inch square with this? Now, they don't have this listed. This is really just what my eye is visually picking up on. And you can see it in the video of gameplay here. This thing just looks incredible. Those other ones look good too. Again, they look like they're 1440p monitors. They're 2K monitors. This one, in terms of the detail, it's just that next step up and it just looks amazing. And you get all of this with a huge amount of versatility in terms of what you get to use this with. So it is going to work with your handhelds if you do have those. the consoles. You can use this as an extra monitor for your PC. Again, all this being portable as well. You could also pair it with your phone. Now for the iPhone, I have an adapter. I can't wait till they switch over to USB Type-C. It just goes in and out, and I think it has more to do with the adapter and the fact that it's the Lightning port here versus just a regular USB Type-C. So if you have an Android, it should be easier to use with this. Mine just cuts out. Like randomly it just cuts out. Again, that had nothing to do with the device. I think it actually has to do with the adapter that I'm using. But can't wait till they switch over, because again, you could use this with your phone, and it's something great if you are traveling and you just want a larger image for watching content, because this is great for watching content as well. And so I could see this being something that, yeah, you get to travel with it, or maybe you're in a dorm room, whatever the situation may be, you just have something that is slim, portable, use it on the go, set it up, put it on a stand if you wanted to, because now we shifted over to like it's just like a regular TV or monitor if you put it on that stand. So again, the versatility, the different connection options here just make this a great device. For the handhelds though, you will be limited by the power of the device, so keep that in mind. Don't expect to hit the 120 Hertz with most of the handhelds that are currently out. They just don't have the power for it. But for consoles, you're gonna get 1440p with 120 Hertz and HDR. So it pairs very well with a PlayStation 5 or Xbox, and of course you can use a Nintendo Switch with this as well, and it will still look great. Next, let's cover the negatives here, and I'm happy to report I actually don't have any glaring negatives with this product. I do have a lot of gray area things to cover though, which again, these are things you may or may not care about, but I do want to make sure that everybody is mindful of them before they purchase this. Starting off here, we're going to talk about the aspect ratio. I almost put this as a negative, as I just find it's a weird thing to commit to in regards to this device, because it's 16 by 10 and not 16 by 9. So this is why the resolution here is 2560 by 1600 and not 2560 by 1440p. So in certain instances, the screen either stretches out or there are black bars on the top and bottom. But with this, I didn't actually find it incredibly noticeable, which is why I just didn't put it as a true negative. If it's stretching it out, you're not going to notice a big difference because it's such a small screen. It's not like you're blowing it up to like a full 55-inch TV size or something like that. If they have the black bars, it's not a big deal is what I've found. But again, be mindful of those two things potentially happening when you're using this device. So I don't think this is a deal breaker by any means, but I do think it's an odd choice on Uperfect's end when they could have gone with a size that was a 16 by 9 aspect ratio, and then you wouldn't have to worry about this at all. But next is going to be the single menu button. I find this style a bit trickier to use since it's so small. I typically like a single button. I don't like multiple buttons, but with here, this is very thin. I give them credit because it's just a very thin portable device, but I wish the end of the button was a little bit bigger so that it would register, because I find myself accidentally clicking this in a lot. So as I'm trying to navigate the menu, I'm accidentally turning things on and off when I'm not meaning to. Next, the inputs here are great, but I would like to see a couple more options down the road for more versatility. An extra USB Type-C and HDMI input here would go a long way for having just multiple things connected to this at once. A long shot would be a DP port. I'm assuming you'd have to go with a mini DP port, because I think the reason they went with the mini HDMI is because they need everything to fit inside of the molding here, which is very thin, and that probably just isn't going to fit. But having a mini DP port would be a nice option. Again, just more options in general would be great to see. Now, I haven't mentioned this in my other portable monitor reviews, but the more I use these, the more I've just noticed the need for more ports. And part of this is because I do think you could use this as a regular monitor, like I mentioned earlier, and in doing so, these extra ports would just go a long way to make the setup even better. Last is something I've included in my other portable monitor reviews, which is the protective case here is decent, but having it clip onto the monitor in a more secure way would be really nice to have. So this uses magnets, and that means that it can slide off. Now, I do like the ability to stand this up, but there's also only one setting for that. So a more secure case would offer more protection, and having more angles to prop this up at would just be nice to have. Well, that's going to wrap this video up. Overall, this is an incredible portable monitor with great visuals and performance at a price that makes it even more appealing. This has so many different use cases. I don't want to cover that long list here. And if you're watching this video, I'm assuming you have your own reason for getting a portable monitor, and I don't think this one will disappoint at all. If you do have any questions about this, let me know in the comment section. I have a link for this in the description if you want to pick it up. If you like the video, hit the like button for me as it helps the channel out. If you want to continue to follow along with all my content, hit the subscribe button for me. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.